Good day, everyone. I hope you have been enjoying the sessions that have been carefully curated by the organizers. Will a robot take your job? I would like to start my sharing today with this question. According to a study conducted by researchers at Oxford University and Deloitte, approximately 35% of the current jobs in the UK are at high risk of computerization over the next 20 years. And perhaps to elaborate this, if you try Googling the phrase, will a robot take your job? You'll find on top of that list a nifty calculator created by the British Broadcasting Corporation or BBC that would predict the probability of your job being taken over by a robot. If you key in accountant, it would suggest that there is a 95% chance that your job would be taken over by a robot. And similarly, if you key in IT engineer, this calculator would suggest that there is a 58% chance that this job would be taken over by a robot. I'm not sure how many of you remember watching the show Tomorrow's World, and a particular episode in 1969 comes to mind when James Burke was asked to predict what the future office would look like. He predicted that disruptive technologies would revolutionize communication at work. For instance, files would be transported around the office on motorized tea trolleys. Messages would be dictated and sent via reel-to-reel tape recorders, and oversized cameras would be used to share documents with colleagues. Now, perhaps this is slightly off mark in today's world, but nonetheless, there are some similarities to the devices we rely on now in the workplace, as what he predicted in 1969. And beneath this concept is a clear recognition that this is a time of digital Darwinism, a time where technology and consumer behavior is evolving faster than businesses can naturally adapt to. Brian Solis defines digital transformation as a degree of disruption brought by technology. In the past, disruption at work was driven by the supply side or the service provider. For example, banks would provide ATMs, phone banking services, and enable cashless transactions through the introduction of credit cards and debit cards. But today, it would seem that the real threat and opportunity in technology's disruption lies in the evolution of customer and employee behavior, their values and their expectations. Disruption at work today is driven by the consumer or the customer, specifically the millennials who expect convenience, expect accessibility, they expect smarter ways to transact. And why is that? It boils down to consumer behavior. Consumers now want to communicate, they want to engage, they want to share using digital technology. So if the consumer behavior is evolving as a result of technology, businesses can either compete to get ahead of it, react to it, or simply just get left behind by it. And so the question we really need to ask ourselves is, how do we cope with this fast-moving train called digital disruption, or some like to call it digital transformation? The evolution of technology is not going to stop or slow down anytime soon. In fact, Moore's law states that we can expect the speed and capability of our computers to increase every couple of years, and we will pay less for them. So this morning, I would like to spend some time to share with you the story of my quest for digital transformation, especially in the last 18 months during this pandemic. In particular, I want to share with you my experience in cultivating a digital culture in my own organization. And perhaps just to give a brief background for the industry that I'm involved in, it requires my organization to be agile and innovative to deal with rapid changes in consumer expectation. We primarily serve the millennials and Gen Z, who account for almost 65% of the global population, and demand for convenience, accessibility, and smarter ways to transact. In recent years, many companies have started to embrace a digital culture in their workplace. We already know how important it is to develop the right corporate culture. This can define how efficiently your team works as a whole and what values your organization hold. But having an excellent culture is one of the defining features of a successful organization. So what does digital culture mean? It simply refers to an organization that transforms their corporate culture into one that incorporates technology in all its aspects of its business, in fact. Instead of merely adding a bit of technology into the workplace, this culture encourages staff to maximize their productivity by using all digital means available. When it is implemented well, a digital culture will help your company to become extremely efficient. And why exactly is this culture important? Isn't it enough just to incorporate a few digital technologies into your workplace? A survey that I read recently comes to mind, McKinsey Digital in 2017, demonstrates that one of the major barriers to digital technology in the workplace is culture. To ensure that your organization maximizes its digital efficiency, you need to incorporate this into your organization. My friends, digital culture has evolved over the years. And maybe to elaborate this, let me take the customer experience industry, an industry that I'm involved in as an example. The traditional contact center, or what was perhaps commonly known as call centers, became popular in the 90s. It was in the landline era when call centers mushroomed, addressing only the basics. Although call centers aren't exactly what you would think of when you consider digital culture, this is where it started. Call centers then mainly provided transactional based services. There was not much variation in the customer service you could offer. It was purely product or operations driven. And that's what we know of the call center, so to speak. But the rise of the internet era between 2001 to 2009 saw the advent of the internet contact centers, no longer call centers now. The creation of the internet changed the face of the digital culture completely. This enabled companies to offer online customer service, which drastically improved customer satisfaction. It also opened up the possibility of multi-channel customer service. The mobile internet era then, subsequent to then, 2010 to 2015, saw the rise of omni-channel service centers. This type of customer service was a huge step up from the multi-channel systems of the previous era. It became possible to focus on optimizing the service, to focus on creating positive customer relations. This was also an era when the e-commercialization of the corporate world started. But today, fast forward another 5 years, we are in this multi-mode digitalization era. We are beginning to see the rise of an intelligent solution center as opposed to a call center or a contact center, providing the best-in-class service delivery. The advancements in technologies that has come to us in the last decade has changed the customer service business drastically. Artificial intelligence is enabling chatbots to provide customers a personalized experience while also being effortless to implement. Process automation is making customer interactions much more seamless. And these new cutting-edge technologies have opened up the doors to many innovative opportunities. It allows companies to have a more proactive approach to customer experience. And to share a little bit about our digital journey, it's essential to realize that there are 3 steps towards achieving this. To simply put these processes and make it easier for us to understand, I've broken it down into 3 steps or 3 stages of a digital journey that you will need to undergo as you try to attain a digital culture. And stage 1 is perhaps what we call is digitization, converting data into digital. The first stage you need to complete is to move all your data on a digital platform. This step is also the easiest thing to do, really, with technology available today, although it's not possible to move forward if you don't compete at this stage. We recommend working in small portions so that it's not overwhelming. The second stage is really about digitalization, digitizing your business. This is the stage where you start to integrate digital methods into your usual business processes. Use this step as a way to check how your team copes with these changes. For example, you can introduce a few different programs into one part of your company. Then ask your team for some feedback about these programs. Use this feedback to implement processes that work for your team. And the third stage, which is what most of us are talking about today, is digital transformation, the change of your model by incorporating digital. Now that you have gone through the first two stages, now it's time to begin this third step, which is really the hardest or one of the hardest things to do, because it includes changing your entire business model. To digitize your culture, you need to make drastic changes in your customer service and your corporate culture. Keep this in mind, that the ultimate goal of digital transformation is to facilitate and improve customer experience. So remember to make changes in your corporate culture with this goal in mind, the simple goal of wanting to improve customer experience. So, how do you develop this digital culture in your organization? If you want to bring about a digital transformation in your business, it is imperative to take a step back and check if your organization has the culture and the leadership readiness required for this change. To put it simply, you need to make sure that everyone in your team is ready for all the changes that will come. A digital transformation will change how your organization works as a whole, and really not in parts. If there are even a few people that aren't on board to make this transformation a success, then it's highly unlikely that your project will succeed. And how do you tell if your company has a team that's ready to make these drastic changes? And from my experience, you probably need to be able to figure this out, or you will be able to figure this out by observing what your team considers most valuable. Does your team have the following traits, a certain trait? Then you would know that they are ready. Firstly, your team has to be focused on ensuring that your clients get the best service. That should be their main focus. One of the main purposes of digital culture is to improve your customer experience, as I mentioned earlier. If your team doesn't fully understand this, then you are not going to have an easy time. Secondly, you must look at the nature of your workplace environment. Your workplace needs to have an environment that promotes team building instead of competition. Digital transformation requires a good amount of teamwork, and believe me, that is so important. This won't be possible in a competitive environment. And the last trait that you will need to look for is if your staff members prefer taking action over planning. Employees that are ready to take the initiative will be a good fit in your digital culture. If you have a team with this trait, it will also be easier for you to transition into digital culture. And although it might seem like the primary goal of digital transformation is to make your business more technologically advanced, this is not the case from my experience. This digital culture values customer experience above everything else. Technology is just a tool that helps to facilitate this. When you're figuring out if your team has the right fit, it's vital to check how tech savvy. It's not vital to check how tech savvy they are. Instead, your main deciding criteria is to figure out how much your employees value customer experience. And so, as we go through this process, and once you have adequately analyzed and have made sure that everyone in your organization is on board with this transformation, you are ready to move on to the next step. But where do you start then? That becomes a big question. I recommend that you look at the digital mega trends in your industry and build your culture around them. Although you'll need to research a little bit more in terms of these mega trends that would affect your industry and what works best for your industry, maybe I can share with you some of the mega trends that shaped my industry that I'm in. The three most valuable mega trends that have emerged in recent years, and I think affects most businesses today, is social media, cloud computing, and analytics. Social media platforms have billions of users, and as time goes on, this influence will only grow larger. If you use it well, it can drive collaboration between employees by strengthening the employer brand. Cloud computing, for example, is a great way to work with individuals that you might not be able to meet with. This becomes so important during this pandemic period. Emails and chat apps can help you gain remote access to talent pools from different countries. This will also allow for a lot of mobility in the workplace, as it is possible to transfer data across continents without much trouble. And we've seen that in the work from home environment that we are in today. Analytics will give you the feedback you need to better your customer service. This data will help you gain deeper insights into your employee performance and behaviors. You can use this to learn exactly which areas you need to improve. So these are some of the mega trends that are redefining the way corporations around the world conduct businesses. You will want to utilize these tactics to make some of your business decisions as successful as possible. And finally, let me share with you a few tips on really how to ensure that you have a high digital success factor. To have the most successful outcome in this endeavor, you need to keep your digital transformation at the core of your organization. And really, from my personal experience, compared to culture building or corporate culture building, the technological aspect of going digital is the easy bit. You may want to focus on changing the different aspects of your organization. And here are some of the changes that I've made in my organization when it came to digital transformation, and it might be helpful for you. We started revamping all our workspaces to fit the digital change. We let our employees create their digital studios. This gave them the ability to tailor their workspaces however they wanted to. And one of the main goals that we had when we began this change was to promote more employee centricity. This is one of the reasons why we started our digital journey in the first place. Next, we changed our entire process to make the customer experience more personal. We wanted to provide the best customer service that was possible. So we analyzed the entire process completely. And after making a lot of alterations, we ended up with a system that far surpassed our previous system. Remember, that's not the format that you have to stick to. Use this to your advantage to create a better customer experience. Finally, we altered our recruitment process completely. We needed to change this process to enable us to build a team with more like-minded individuals. Don't just pick digital talent with the right digital skills. Make sure that all the candidates have the right cultural fit to your organization. To make it easy to implement this change, let me just share with you a few ideas that you could use. When our company started with digital transformation, we created a separate digital unit to develop digital services. Then we reintegrated them back into the main unit, to the core part of our business. To unlock the true potential of digital transformation, it is necessary to bring about a digital culture that is employee-centric and value-focused. Another point I wish to make is, for you to make it a point to enable digital culture by driving employee centricity. Creating a digital culture is a massive task that will require you to revamp your system. This is why you need to focus on the employees. To enable employee centricity, you will want to engage and inspire the entire workforce while empowering them to drive the cultural change together. This empowerment can happen by reskilling your staff, tending to digital skills, leveraging collaborative tools to improve productivity, and using matrices to enable measurable value through KPIs, and adopting a systematic approach to drive this change. One of the defining features of digital culture is that it improves your customer engagement. Adopting this practice of digitalization can make employees more involved in customer service. This can enable customer-centric engagements and in creating better solutions relevant to the business need. I really recommend you to use some of these tips that I give you as a framework to monitor how much progress your company has made. Build a framework in a way that makes these employees the agents of change. Make use of the framework to bring in a work culture that empowers employees to make informed, context-aware decisions, focus on continuous improvement, and take calculated risk. And lastly, I just want to share with you, how do you guarantee this after doing all of this that this works for you? Let's not kid ourselves. It's not an easy task to change the entire corporate culture. To guarantee your success in this field, you must put in a lot of time and effort. And because of the hard work that is required to implement a digital transformation, it should come as no surprise that it's easy to slip up now and then. You're bound to run into a few pitfalls along the way. For example, your team will take the time to learn how to incorporate this culture into their work. If you don't take this factor into account, it will lead to your team getting overwhelmed by all the changes. If you want to give your company the best chance at success, there are three main things that you would need to keep in mind to avoid these pitfalls. Number one, you need to start at the top first and make sure that the leader leads by example. Leaders must be at the forefront of change. They should be able to set clear goals for the employees. The person in charge should also know how to pick out the essential characteristics of their preferred culture. They must encourage their team to stick to these characteristics. Leaders should also continuously assess the changes to identify any faults and fix them. If the person at the center of the organization is not fully committed to the digitalization agenda, then you can't expect the transformation process to succeed. Keep in mind that a culture doesn't mean that old methods should be scrapped entirely. Don't make the mistake of trying to replace every single aspect of your corporate culture with something new. Make use of all the best practices from the previous culture. You can start slowly by incorporating the new tactics with the old ones. The previous plan's best culture practices can be blended with the current ones that you have created to create a new employee behavioral pattern in a new digital ecosystem, so to speak. Another thing that can lead to the downfall of this whole operation is if you try to push or rush the process. Before implementing this change, you must experiment to figure out what works for your company. Different teams adapt differently to changes. You will need to pay attention to how your team works and plan accordingly. Pilot programs is a good way, a great place to start when you are enabling cultural change. You can use these programs to elicit new behaviors from your team. You could start by focusing on one area first and see how the team deals with it and deals with these new challenges. If the criteria are met, you begin to implement this culture in other ways. And based on this success of the pilot, leaders then can alter their transformation plan accordingly. Dear listeners, hopefully this sharing today has given you everything you need to know to implement a digital culture in your company. Keep this in mind. This process is not going to be quick. Because of the nature of digital transformation, it will likely take your company a while to gradually incorporate these changes. In fact, the initial stages, the results aren't going to be very apparent. However, if you continue to stick to this path, then the long-term benefits are enormous. Companies such as Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and IBM are well known for their innovation. They were able to disrupt the technology world through their widely acclaimed digitized culture. And one of the reasons they managed to become so successful is because they embrace digitalization. Your organization, yours and mine, will need to make drastic changes to excel in this competitive digital age. So why not start now rather than later? Thank you.